Something is very wrong with Neverland, and I don't think anyone is ready for what's coming next. That glowing object Pink found at the end of the last movie? It wasn't just a random mystery, it was a warning. Because in the Descendants 6 Neverland trailer, everything feels different, darker, twisted. And for the first time, it doesn't feel like there's just one villain. It feels like the entire world is breaking apart. And if what we're seeing is actually true, then this next movie might completely change everything we thought we knew about Descendants. Let's start with what shocked me the most. The moment we see Neverland, it looks magical at first, just like we would expect. Bright skies, glowing waters, that dreamy fairy tale vibe. But the more you look at it, the more something feels off. The colors are slightly faded, the atmosphere feels heavy, and there's this constant tension in the air like something is watching. And that's when it hit me. This is not the Neverland we know. This is a version of Neverland that has been affected by the broken timeline. Because remember, Red and Chloe didn't just change one event, they changed everything. And when you mess with time on that level, the consequences don't stay in one place, they spread. Slowly, quietly, until every world starts to feel it. And this is where things get really interesting. Because Neverland is not just another location, it's a place that already exists outside normal rules. Time works differently there. People don't grow up. Stories don't end the way they're supposed to. So if the timeline is already unstable, and now it's affecting a place like Neverland, that could create something completely unpredictable. Something even more dangerous than a single villain. It could create chaos itself. Now let's talk about the biggest hint the trailer gives us. Hazel Hook. The moment she appears, everything changes. We already know she wanted to go to Neverland to meet her father, Captain Hook. But what if this reunion is not what she expected? What if Captain Hook is not the same person in this new timeline? Think about it. If Maddox became a completely different villain because of the timeline shift, then what's stopping other characters from changing too? Captain Hook could be more powerful, more ruthless, or maybe even completely unrecognizable. And if Hazel is walking into that without knowing the truth, she could be putting herself, and everyone else, in serious danger. But here's where the theory gets even deeper. What if Neverland is the key to everything? What if the glowing object Pink found is somehow connected to this world? Because in the trailer, we see this strange energy, something that looks very similar to the glow from that object. And it doesn't feel like a coincidence. It feels connected, like that object is not just important. It's pulling them toward Neverland for a reason, almost like it wants them to go there. And that raises a terrifying possibility. What if Pink didn't just find the object? What if the object chose her? Because if that's true, then Pink might be way more important than we think. Not just a side character, not just Red's sister, but the center of everything that's about to happen. And if the power of that object is tied to Neverland, then this trip is not going to be a simple adventure. It's going to be the moment where everything finally starts to fall apart. Now here's where things start to get even more unsettling. Because if Neverland itself is unstable, then the people inside it won't be normal either. And the trailer quietly hints at this in a very disturbing way. Characters don't just feel different, they feel off. Like they're hiding something. Like they know more than they should. And this brings us to one of the most dangerous possibilities in Descendants 6. What if there is no clear villain this time? What if everyone is slowly becoming one? Think about the pattern we've already seen. In the last movie, Chloe was turned evil with something as small as a bracelet. A single object was enough to completely change her personality. Now imagine that same kind of influence, but on a much larger scale. An entire world like Neverland, filled with magic, already disconnected from reality. It wouldn't take much to push it over the edge. And if that glowing object is spreading some kind of energy, then it might not just affect one person, it could affect everyone. And this connects directly to something very important, the idea of identity. Because in this new timeline, people are not who they used to be. Red's mother changed, Maddox became a completely different version of himself. Even relationships started shifting in ways that didn't feel natural. So what happens when characters in Neverland start losing their sense of who they really are? What happens when memories, emotions, and loyalty start to blur? We might start seeing characters turn against each other without even realizing it. Friends questioning friends, families breaking apart. And not because they want to, but because something is influencing them from the inside. Something subtle, something powerful, something that doesn't need to control you completely, just enough to make you doubt everything. And this is where Hazel's story becomes even more important. Because she's not just going to Neverland for adventure, she's going there for something personal, to find her father, to finally understand where she comes from. But what if the version of Captain Hook she meets is not the father she imagined? What if he represents everything she's afraid of becoming? Because let's be honest, Every VK carries that fear. The fear that no matter how much they try to change, their past will always catch up to them. And Neverland might be the place where that fear becomes real, where the line between hero and villain completely disappears. And there's another detail in the trailer that most people probably missed. The way certain moments feel repeated. Like time is looping or glitching. It's subtle, but it's there. And if that's actually happening, then we're not just dealing with a broken timeline anymore. We're dealing with a timeline that is collapsing in on itself. Events repeating, choices resetting, characters being forced to relive moments again and again until something changes. And if that's true, then this raises a very serious question. Are the characters really moving forward, or are they trapped? Because if Neverland becomes a place where time no longer moves in a straight line, then escaping it won't be easy. It might even be impossible without fixing whatever is causing the distortion. And that brings us right back to the glowing object. Because if that object is the source of this instability, then destroying it might not fix things. It might actually make everything worse, which means for the first time, the characters might have to face a completely new kind of challenge. Not defeating a villain, not fixing a mistake, but understanding something they don't fully control. Something bigger than them, something that doesn't follow the rules they're used to. And if they get it wrong, Neverland might not be the only world that falls apart, but everything we've talked about so far leads to something even bigger. Something that could completely flip the entire story upside down. Because what if the glowing object is not just affecting the present? What if it's bringing back pieces of the original timeline? Think about that for a second. Before Red and Chloe changed the past, there was a completely different version of reality. Different choices, different outcomes, different people. But when they rewrote time, that version didn't just disappear, it had to go somewhere. And what if Neverland is the place where those lost fragments ended up? It would explain a lot. The strange energy, the feeling that something is not right, the way characters seem like different versions of themselves. Because maybe they actually are. Maybe Neverland is slowly merging two timelines together, the one we know, and the one that was erased. And if that's happening, then the characters are not just dealing with confusion or emotional conflict, they're dealing with two identities existing at the same time, two sets of memories, two versions of who they are supposed to be. And eventually, that kind of pressure can only lead to one thing, a complete breakdown. Now this is where Pink becomes the most important piece of the puzzle, because out of everyone, she is the one directly connected to that object. She touched it, she kept it, and most importantly, she didn't tell anyone about it. That alone feels intentional. Like deep down she already knows it's not something normal. But what if it goes even further than that? What if Pink is the only one who can actually see the truth? The only one who can remember both timelines at once? Because if the object is tied to the original timeline, then it might be giving her access to something no one else has. Memories that shouldn't exist anymore. Moments that were erased. And if she starts realizing that the world she's living in now is not the real one, that could completely change her. At first, it might just be small things. Confusion, doubt, questioning what's real and what isn't. But over time, that kind of knowledge can become dangerous. Because once you see the truth, you can't ignore it. And if Pink starts believing that the original timeline was better, or more correct, then she might try to bring it back. And that's where things take a very dark turn. Because restoring the original timeline wouldn't just fix things, it would erase everything that exists now. Every relationship, every change, every moment these characters have built since the timeline was altered. It would be like none of it ever happened, which means Pink wouldn't just be making a choice, she would be deciding which reality deserves to exist. And if she feels like no one else understands what she's seeing, she might not even give them a choice. She might start acting on her own, keeping secrets, making decisions behind everyone's back, slowly drifting away from Red, even though they're supposed to be closer than ever. And let's be honest, we've already seen how dangerous isolation can be in this story. When characters stop trusting each other, that's when everything falls apart. And if Pink becomes the only one holding the truth, then she also becomes the most unpredictable character in the entire movie. Not because she wants to be evil, but because she believes she's right, and sometimes, that's even worse.